3 years ago, Megan made the biggest purchase of her life, a cozy house nestled in the mountains, the perfect retreat from the noise of the world. She wasn't the type to host big parties or family gatherings. In fact, she preferred solitude, peace, quiet. The house was meant to be a sanctuary, a place where she could focus on her work as an app developer and enjoy the occasional ski trip on the nearby slopes. But the moment she told her family about her new home, she saw something in their eyes that sent a shiver down her spine. Excitement. Not for her, but for themselves. A house near the ski slopes? Oh, that's perfect, her mom had exclaimed, clapping her hands together like she had just won the lottery. You should host Christmas this year. The words hit like a hammer. Megan hesitated. She hadn't even finished unpacking yet, and they were already planning a takeover. I don't know, she had replied carefully, gripping her coffee mug tighter. It's not that big, and I'm not really set up for entertaining. Nonsense, her dad had cut in. It'll be good for you to have some company. You spend too much time alone. Alone, that word again. As if choosing solitude meant something was wrong with her. Come on, Meg, her brother Dave had added. The kids would love to go skiing. That was the moment she realized. This wasn't really a request. It was a decision they had already made for her. And despite the gnawing feeling in her stomach telling her to stand her ground, she gave in. After all, it was just one Christmas, right? How bad could it be? The answer came as soon as they arrived. Megan stood in the doorway as a parade of people spilled out of the cars in her driveway. Her parents, her brother Dave, his wife Lisa, their 2 kids, her younger sister Rachel, Rachel's husband Mark, their 4-year-old daughter, and a mountain of luggage, presents, and ski gear. It was like watching a clown car empty out, and every single one of them was grinning, excited for their vacation. Her mom was the first to step inside, eyes sweeping across the room like a hotel guest judging the lobby. Oh, Megan, this place is gorgeous. I can't believe you live here all by yourself. Megan forced a smile. Thanks, Mom. Let me show you around. The tour took about 5 minutes, because that's all it took to see everything. It wasn't a mansion, just a 3-bedroom house. But as she walked them through, she realized something. Only one of these rooms was actually a bedroom. The second was her office, essential for her work. The third was barely set up, just a makeshift guest room with a fold-out couch. So, where are we all sleeping? Rachel asked, raising an eyebrow. Megan hesitated. Well, the guest room has a pull-out bed, and I have air mattresses. Air mattresses? Lisa frowned. That doesn't sound very comfortable. Megan bit her tongue. This is my house. If you don't like it, book a hotel. But of course, no one even suggested that. Instead, they dropped their bags and made themselves at home, immediately. Where's dinner? Mom asked as she peeked into the kitchen. Don't tell me you haven't started cooking yet. Megan took a slow breath. She had anticipated this question. That's why she had ordered a full Christmas meal from a well-reviewed restaurant in town. Turkey, ham, stuffing, mashed potatoes, desserts, everything. It had cost a fortune, but she figured it was worth it to avoid spending days in the kitchen. I ordered from Pine Valley Restaurant, she explained. They're delivering everything tomorrow morning. Her mother's face fell like she had just announced someone had died. Restaurant food? For Christmas? I've been swamped with work, Megan said, keeping her voice level. I didn't have time to. A good hostess would have made time, her mom interrupted, lips pursed. When I hosted Christmas, I started preparing days ahead. Megan clenched her jaw. There was no point arguing. Her mom had never really understood her career, always treating it like some kind of hobby rather than an actual job. Dinner arrived the next day, and despite her mother's disapproval, everyone loved it. But then came the gift exchange, and that's when Megan realized just how little her family actually valued her. She had spent weeks picking out the perfect gifts for each of them. The latest gaming system for Dave, a designer purse for Lisa, a luxury spa package for Rachel, high-end toys for the kids, and even a weekend getaway for her parents. And in return, Rachel handed her a scarf. Dave and Lisa gave her socks. Her parents, a coffee mug that said "World's Best Aunt." We all pitched in, her mom said proudly. We thought it would be more meaningful that way. Megan smiled and thanked them. But inside, something was shifting. A realization. This isn't about family. This is about what they can get from me. The days after Christmas were pure chaos. The kids treated her house like an amusement park. running up and down the stairs, leaving toys everywhere, spilling drinks on the rugs. The adults? They went skiing every single day. And they expected Megan to take care of everything else. Dishes piled up in the sink. Wet towels covered the bathroom floors. No one offered to help clean, not once. "Megan, we're out of coffee," her dad announced one morning as she was trying to squeeze in an hour of work. "There's a grocery store 10 minutes away," she replied, not looking up from her laptop. "Well, we don't know the area," he said, shrugging, "and we're all getting ready to go skiing." She knew what that meant. With a sigh, she closed her laptop, grabbed her coat, and drove to the store, while they continued preparing for their fun day. By New Year's Eve, she was exhausted, behind on work, and her bank account had taken a serious hit. And then, her mother raised a glass and said something that made Megan's stomach drop. "This has been so wonderful," she gushed. "We should do this every year." Megan almost choked on her champagne. The next morning, they all packed up and left. Not one of them stripped a bed. Not one of them washed a dish. Not one of them even thanked her properly. And as they drove away, she stood in the doorway of her destroyed house, exhaustion pressing down on her like a weight. She promised herself right then and there this would never happen again. But she had underestimated them, because a year later, 2 weeks before Christmas, her phone rang. "Hey, honey," her mom chirped. "Guess what? We're all coming back for Christmas. We had such a great time last year, and we wouldn't dream of celebrating anywhere else." Before Megan could even process what was happening, her mother cheerfully added, "Oh, and Rachel invited some of the cousins this time. It's going to be amazing." Then, before she could protest, her mom hung up. Megan stared at the phone. Her stomach turned. This time, she wasn't just dealing with her immediate family. She was about to be overrun, and no one had even asked. Megan had always been a patient person. She let things slide. She didn't like confrontation. It was easier to go along with things than to make a fuss. But this time, things were different. This time, they weren't just inviting themselves, they were invading. The moment she saw her sister's social media post, the one that so casually confirmed their annual Christmas ski trip at Aunt Megan's, she knew talking wasn't going to work. Her mother had already brushed off her concerns when she tried to protest over the phone. Number, if they weren't going to listen, they were going to learn. She had exactly 2 weeks to prepare. The first thing she did was get a security system installed, cameras outside the house, a new lock on her front door, and an app on her phone that let her control everything remotely. She wasn't going to let them guilt her into opening the door. Then she stocked up on groceries, just enough for herself, no extra snacks, no bulk bags of chips for the kids, no restaurant-sized portions of food, and finally, she gave her neighbors a warning. "If a bunch of people show up at my house around Christmas and start making a scene," she explained to Mr. Peterson next door, "just know, I did not invite them." The old man had nodded slowly, taking a sip of his tea. "Sounds like a family problem." "It is," she admitted, "but they don't respect boundaries, and I'm done letting them walk all over me." Mr. Peterson smirked. "I'll keep an eye out." And then she waited. A week before Christmas, it happened. She was sitting in her living room, curled up on the couch with a book, when the security app on her phone pinged. Motion detected. Driveway. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. Cars. 5 of them. Packed with people. And luggage. Her jaw tightened. They weren't just coming for Christmas. They had moved in for the holidays. She watched as doors flew open and bodies tumbled out. Her parents, Rachel and her husband, Dave and Lisa, their kids, and even extended family she barely knew. They had brought cousins. Rachel's kids were already bouncing around in the snow, throwing handfuls at each other. Dave was unloading ski gear. Her mother was walking toward the door, a wide smile on her face, phone in hand, no doubt preparing to record a heartwarming reunion to post online. The doorbell rang. Megan didn't move. A few seconds passed. It rang again, and again, then knocking. Loud, insistent knocking. She turned her phone volume down and let out a slow breath. They would not ruin her holiday again. After about 5 minutes, her phone rang. It was her dad. "Megan, we're all here. Open up." No. Silence. A full beat of silence before he let out a short laugh, like she was joking. "Come on, honey, don't be ridiculous. We've been driving for hours." "I told you I wasn't hosting Christmas this year," she said calmly. "I told all of you." "You're serious?" His tone changed. Now there was real confusion, like the idea that she would actually stand her ground had never even crossed his mind. Yes, well, where are we supposed to go? She almost laughed. Not my problem, but she didn't say that. She just said, there are hotels in town. Her dad scoffed. Megan, we didn't plan for that. We have the kids with us. And that's your responsibility. More knocking, more ringing. Megan, stop being so dramatic. Her mom's voice cut in. We're family. Open the door. I already said no. Then she hung up. And for the first time in years, she felt a rush of pure satisfaction. Outside, her family huddled together, now fully realizing that Megan wasn't joking. Her mother was shaking her head, clearly ranting about Megan's behavior. Rachel was hugging her kids, looking offended that her sister would leave children out in the cold. Dave was pacing like he was trying to figure out a plan. And then, because apparently they still weren't getting it, the kids started making snowballs. Megan narrowed her eyes as she watched her nephew wind up and hurl one straight at her window. It smacked against the glass with a loud thud. Another one followed, and another. She grabbed her phone and dialed. Rachel answered immediately, sounding indignant. Oh, now you want to talk? Tell your kids to stop throwing things at my house. Rachel let out an irritated sigh. Oh, for God's sake, Megan, they're just playing. I have security cameras recording everything, she interrupted. If they break a window, I will report the damage. Silence. Then, you're being insane. Am I? Megan's voice was calm, controlled. Because you showed up at my house uninvited, refused to leave, and now your kids are throwing things at my property. Rachel spluttered, probably trying to come up with a reason why this was Megan's fault. Megan didn't wait to hear it. She just said, get off my property, and hung up. Outside, the kids were pulled away from the house. The adults were furious now, gesturing wildly, arguing amongst themselves. And then, like a gift from the universe, her neighbor, Mr. Peterson, stepped outside. He was in his 70s, tall with a no-nonsense demeanor, and he did not like disruptions in the neighborhood. He walked up to the group, hands in his coat pockets, and asked, "What's going on here?" Her mother jumped in first. "Our daughter has locked us out for Christmas. We came all this way and she won't even open the door." Mr. Peterson gave them a long, unimpressed look. Then he said, "Did she invite you?" The stunned silence that followed was priceless. "Well, no, but..." "Then you're trespassing," he said simply. "If you don't leave, I'll have to call the police." Megan watched the color drain from their faces. They had never imagined this plan could backfire. And yet, here they were. After a long, heated discussion, the group finally started packing back into their cars. One by one, engines roared to life. And then, just like that, they were gone. Megan let out a slow breath, staring at the now empty driveway. For the first time in years, her house was truly hers, and it felt amazing. Megan sat on her couch, phone in hand, watching the last car disappear down the snowy road. The house was silent, completely, utterly, blissfully silent. No children screaming, no demands for food, no complaints about how she wasn't being a good hostess. For the first time in years, she had won. She leaned back, exhaling slowly, letting the weight of the last few weeks finally settle. They were gone. They were actually gone. But peace never lasted long when it came to her family. Her phone buzzed, one notification, then another, then 10. At first, she thought it was them trying to call her, begging her to reconsider. But when she unlocked the screen, she was met with something worse. A social media post. A picture of Rachel's 2 kids standing outside in the snow, bundled up in their winter coats, sad expressions on their faces. The caption made Megan's stomach twist. "Christmas ruined." The kids were so excited to spend the holidays with family, but their aunt locked them out in the cold. Heartbroken doesn't even begin to describe it. Family should be about love, not shutting people out. The comments were already rolling in. "Oh my God, what kind of person does that? I can't believe your sister is so cruel. Wow, you should never speak to her again." Megan stared at the screen, rage bubbling under the surface. Rachel had twisted the truth, painting herself as the victim, and Megan as some heartless monster who had abandoned her family on Christmas. And it wasn't just Rachel. Lisa had posted something too, A long dramatic paragraph about how the holidays were meant to be spent with loved ones, about how some people clearly didn't understand the meaning of family. Then, her mom. A status update. I raised my daughter to have a kind heart. I don't know where I went wrong. Meghan's blood boiled. They weren't just mad. They were publicly shaming her, and people were eating it up. Friends from high school, people Meghan hadn't spoken to in years, were chiming in with their 2 cents, commenting things like, "Yikes, I always knew she was kind of selfish," and "Can't believe she did that to her own family." Her own relatives were sharing the posts. No one was asking for her side of the story, because in their minds, there was no other side. Meghan was the villain, and Rachel was the poor, innocent mother whose children had been left out in the cold, abandoned on Christmas by their evil, selfish aunt. She wanted to scream. She wanted to call them all out, post the security footage, list every single thing they had done to her over the years, the way they had used her, drained her, taken her generosity for granted, and given nothing in return. But she didn't, because the truth was, it wouldn't matter. They didn't care about what really happened. They only cared about their version of the story. Meghan locked her phone and set it down on the coffee table. Let them talk. Let them rant and rage and turn her into the villain in their perfect little Christmas movie. She didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. The days passed in silence. No phone calls, no texts. For the first time in her life, her family had completely shut her out. And the most shocking part, she felt nothing but relief. No one was asking for money. No one was complaining about how she wasn't being hospitable enough. No one was expecting her to drop everything to cater to them. For the first time in years, Meghan woke up without stress sitting on her chest like a boulder. She made herself a cup of coffee, one that she didn't have to rush to make before someone else complained that she hadn't stocked the right creamer. She took a shower without finding wet towels all over her bathroom floor. She cooked a meal, just for herself, without having to listen to her mother criticize her for not making enough side dishes. It was the most peaceful, stress-free week she had ever had. And then, on Christmas morning, the silence was deafening. For years, Christmas had meant chaos. It meant screaming children, ungrateful relatives, stress, mess, and exhaustion. But this year, she sat on her couch in fuzzy socks, sipping cocoa, wrapped in a blanket, watching the snow fall outside. She had never felt more content. And then, an idea hit her. A way to really close the chapter on her family's nonsense. She grabbed her phone, opened her social media account, and started typing. Public service announcement. I am not hosting any family members at my house this Christmas. I repeat, no one is invited to my house for the holidays. Make other plans. She posted it, sat back, waited. The notifications came almost immediately. First, laughter. Ha ha ha, good one, Meg. Classic Meghan humor. See you soon. They still thought she was joking. Meghan smiled to herself. They would learn. She poured herself another cup of coffee, stretched out on the couch, and watched the snow drift peacefully outside. She didn't need to convince them to respect her boundaries. She just needed to enforce them. And this year, she had done just that. Meghan hadn't spoken to her family in months. Not a single text. No check-ins, no calls, not even the obligatory happy birthday message from her mom. Her phone, once constantly lighting up with last-minute requests, guilt trips, and demands, was now blissfully silent, and she was thriving. Her work had never been better. Without the constant distractions and emotional exhaustion from dealing with her family, she had poured her energy into her projects, and it had paid off. Not only had she met her deadlines, but she had landed a major promotion. A significant raise, more creative control, and, most importantly, respect from people who actually valued what she did. But the real prize wasn't the money. It was the peace. No more waking up to frantic messages from her mom. No more passive-aggressive guilt trips from Rachel. No more. Meghan, can you do this? Meghan, can you cover that? Meghan, we need you to drop everything and take care of us. For the first time in her life, she was truly free. And then, out of nowhere, the notifications started rolling in again. It was mid-October when Meghan first noticed the pattern. Small things at first. A like on an old photo. A distant cousin reacting to her Instagram story. Rachel commenting on a random post about work with something neutral like, "Congrats." They were testing the waters. She ignored it. Then, a week before Thanksgiving, her mom sent a simple text. "Mom, hey sweetie, hope you're doing well." Meghan stared at it for a long moment. No mention of what had happened, No apology, just a casual, "Hey, let's pretend you didn't shut us out last Christmas." She left it on read. 2 weeks later, Rachel reached out. "Rachel, hey, are you coming home for Christmas?" Home. Like she didn't own her own home. Like she was supposed to crawl back and pretend none of this had happened. Megan took a sip of her coffee and typed out a response. "Megan, no," Rachel replied instantly. "Rachel, come on. I know last year was messy, but we're still family. We should be together for the holidays." Megan tilted her head, reading the words over again. Together. The same people who had trashed her house, mocked her boundaries, and publicly shamed her for standing up for herself were suddenly all about togetherness. She took a slow breath and typed her reply. "Megan, I spent years being generous. I spent years hosting, cooking, cleaning, and paying for everything while all of you treated my house like a free vacation rental. Last year, I set a boundary. You didn't respect it. Instead, you threw a fit and tried to turn me into the villain." There was a long pause. Then, "Rachel, we didn't mean to make you feel that way." Megan nearly laughed. They didn't mean to? They had mocked her online. They had guilt-tripped her. They had stormed her house and refused to leave. They had meant every word. They just hadn't expected consequences. She didn't reply, and that silence, it was powerful. For the first time, she wasn't bending over backwards to explain herself. She wasn't scrambling to smooth things over. She was letting them sit with it. Because they had broken the relationship, not her. And she wasn't about to fix it for them. December rolled in, and with it, the cold, crisp air that Megan had come to love. But this time, instead of preparing for an onslaught of uninvited guests, she was preparing for something completely different. A trip, not a ski trip, not a family trip, a solo vacation. The week before Christmas, she packed her bags, locked up her house, and headed straight to the airport. Destination, a private beachside resort. She spent Christmas morning lounging on a sun-drenched balcony, sipping fresh fruit juice, watching the waves roll in. She took her time eating breakfast, food she didn't have to cook. She walked along the shoreline, the sand warm under her feet. And the best part? Her phone was silent. No last-minute demands, no guilt-tripping messages. Just peace. She could almost imagine the chaos back home. Her mom trying to organize a holiday feast without her. Rachel scrambling to deal with the kids. Dave whining about how Christmas wasn't the same. And yet, she felt nothing but freedom. For the first time in years, she wasn't the family doormat. She wasn't the unpaid chef, maid, and hostess. She was just Megan, and that was enough. When she returned home after New Year's, her phone had a few missed calls. A voicemail from her dad, short and awkward. "Hope you had a nice holiday. Call when you can." But she didn't rush to respond, because she had finally learned something. Love is a two-way street, and if her family wanted to be in her life, they had to earn it.